Hi everyone, my name is Vivek and welcome to my channel. Today we are building a personal budget calculator web application. In this video, I'll show you step by step how to build a sleek web application that lets you add categories, set spending limits, and track your expenses like a pro. By the end, you will not only have a working web application, but also the skills to customize it for your own needs. And the best part, you will understand every line of code, even if you are a beginner. So stick around because by the end of this video, you will have a fully functional budget tracker that can save your wallet from sneaky expenses. Let's get started. Here is our project structure. We have an app.py file, which will be the backend of our application. And I have created a couple of HTML files like the base.html, categories.html, dashboard.html, and expenses.html. All these HTML files are inside template folder because these are going to be our front-end design and coding. Alright, next. Now let's create a virtual environment for our project. So go to view and open your terminal. Alright, let me change to command prompt, ls. To create a virtual environment, just enter this command in your terminal, python-m venv, which means virtual environment, with the name of the environment you are creating. For this case, I'll just name it test. Press enter. Yes. Once the command is successfully executed, you will see that in your project structure, there is a folder created called test, which is going to be our virtual environment, and all the packages and all the libraries we'll be installing for this project will be stored inside this virtual environment. Next, we have to activate the virtual environment. To activate the virtual environment, you have to give the name of the folder which was just created, test/script, and then activate. So once the environment is activated, you will see the virtual environment name appearing at the beginning of your command prompt here. Now let's install all the libraries we need for this project. For this project, we need Flask and Flask SQLAlchemy, and the command to install these packages is pip install. Just hit enter. This will install all the packages we need for this project. Alright, so the packages are installed. Now if you go to the test folder inside libraries, you should see the packages which are installed. For example, Flask, SQLAlchemy. Alright, now that we have all the packages and required files in place, let's start building the front end. So first I'll create the base.html file. Base.html is going to be the main template for our front end. Right, so this is our base.html template. Let me show you what I have written. So we have a title, personal budget calculator, and I'm using the CSS from Bootstrap. This is the URL, and I have added CSS classes to make the base.html look presentable. In line number 10 here, this will create a URL, and the URL will be linked to our dashboard route. We will develop this route once we start building our backend logic. I'm also creating two more URL. One is to view our categories and the other one is to view our expenses. On this part of the code, here I'm creating a placeholder using Jinja2 template. All the other files, the files for the categories, dashboard, and expenses will be displayed here on this part of the block. Now let's build the backend logic so that we can execute this application and see the output. First, let's import the libraries for this project. Flask, import. I'm going to import Flask, render template, request, redirect, and URL underscore for. We will also import SQLite 3, this one, right? Alright. Next, let's initialize the Flask application. App equals to Flask. We'll use the magic variable, and that's it. In order to run this application, we'll have to write one more piece of code, which is this. if name equals to main, debug equals to true, right? This line says execute the app only when this application is executed directly. So if the name is equal to main, then only execute this application. And set debug equals to true will help us investigate any issues we face. Now let's execute the application. So again, open your terminal. Inside this, let me clear the screen. Now execute this command, python.app.py. Click on this URL. Alright, so this is an expected result, right? Because 404 not found says that there is no route created for our root URL yet. So let's create the route for our root URL. This will create our root route. So when we visit our root URL, the server will redirect us to this route. Inside this route, we will define a function, dashboard. Now just to see the result, what we can do is we can return and render our base.html template. Right, let's create the route for our categories and the expenses. Categories. Again, we'll define a function. Now, when a person clicks on the category URL, I mean this URL or this link, our server will directly call this route, and inside this route I'm just returning the template for now, render template, and let's say categories.html. Let's create one more route, and this time I'll create the route for view expenses. I mean this should be view expenses, and define a function, just view expenses. For now, let's return the HTML template, return render HTML template, and this is going to be our expenses.html. And here it is. This is the basic look of our application. We have two buttons, expenses and categories, which we have seen in our base.html, this and this. And we also have a budget calculator, which is linked to dashboard. Let me cancel this execution. Now, before moving ahead, we have to make sure that our database connection is established and all the tables are created in that database. Now we are going to configure our database for this application. So let's do that. I'll just give one more line here just to separate this part of the code from the rest. Let's define a function called getDBConnection. We will call this function whenever we want to connect to our database. Create a variable connection and SQLite 3 and then connect. We have to mention the database name here, budget.eb should be fine. Now connection.rowFactory equal to SQLite 3.row, and this function is going to just return the connection. This line makes our database query result act like a dictionary. So you can use column name like this amount to access the amount of a row instead of a number like this. Alright, now that our database connection is set up, we have to initialize our database. So let's create one more function to initialize our DB, init_db. I forgot to mention about this line of code, especially the database name. This database is not yet created in our folder structure. This will be created once we initialize our database, right? Alright, now let's get the connection equal to get connection, and then let's create a cursor, connection.cursor. Cursor is like a pointer which is used to access the database. And here we will use cursor to create tables by executing SQL statement. Now let's create our first table. Cursor.execute is a function which is used to execute SQL statement. Right, so here is our SQL statement. We are creating a table if not exist, and the table name is category. And this table will have an ID column, a name column, and spending limit. We need one more table for this application. So now let's execute one more SQL statement, cursor.execute, and let's give 3 commas. That's it. And this is our second SQL statement. This will create a table called expenses. And this table will have an ID column, category ID, description, amount, and the ID of this table will be linked to a foreign key of category table, this one. After every SQL statement, we have to make sure we execute commit function so that our database changes are made permanent. And also remember to close the connection. That's it. Now let's call the init_db function. This will create our tables and databases in our folder structure over here. Now let's execute our application one more time. Go to view, terminal, and then again execute this command. So this is our front page. We have already seen this. Important thing to check out is the folder structure. Inside this, we have a database created called budget.db, and if you click on this, you will see the tables. So these SQL statements are executed and we have a table. The table structure cannot be seen here. Now that our basic setup is ready, we have tables, we have databases. Now it's time to write the logic for our dashboard. Alright, so here is our dashboard logic. We are creating a database connection and executing an SQL statement. Now remember, this is a joined SQL statement. We are fetching data such as ID, name, spending limit from categories, and amount as total spent from expenses. And we are joining these two tables based on the ID of categories and category IDs in expenses table. Fetching all the records. Once we have the record in our categories, we are closing the connection. Now, if you are not familiar with SQL joins, comment below. I will try to create a separate video on this. Now for this function, we have just one thing left, which is to return the template, the rendered template. Now we are going to return dashboard.html and we are returning all the categories. Categories equals to categories. Now that our dashboard backend logic is ready, it is time to build the front end for our dashboard. So we have dashboard.html. Here I am going to write the front end code for our dashboard. So here is our HTML code for dashboard. We are extending our base.html and the content for dashboard begins from here and ends here. Now as I have told you that this block will appear in base.html on this part. Inside dashboard, we are just looping through categories because in app.py in dashboard function, we are returning categories. So we are looping through the categories and displaying total spent and spending limit. Also displaying some messages. For example, if the total spend is greater than spending limit, we are showing a danger or alert message like over limit. That's it. This is our dashboard.html. Save this file and then let's see the output. Refresh this page. We have our dashboard here. Alright, since we don't have any expenses or categories created yet, that's why we are not able to see any categories or expenses inside dashboard. Next thing is to create the logic for our categories, the backend logic for categories. Now this is very simple logic for view categories. We are just creating a connection, executing an SQL statement and selecting all the categories from categories table and returning those categories to our categories.html file. Let's write the logic for view expenses, and again here we are creating a connection, executing an SQL statement. Now this SQL statement is a join SQL statement which is combining two tables, expenses and categories, joining based on the categories and ID column. Also we are fetching the categories, all the categories from category table and returning expenses and categories to expenses.html file. So this is just the view logic. Now we have to write the logic to create, delete and edit views and categories. Alright, now let's write our logic to add categories. So we'll create a route for this, add.route and then add category. We will accept post method. Let's define a function, add_category. Before moving ahead, let's create the front end for adding category. Why I want to do this? Because the front end will have a form and inside that form, I'll create a couple of field for entering the category name, spending limit. So before doing the backend logic, let's build the front end first, categories. So this is going to be our categories.html file. Again, we are extending it from base.html and the block starts from here and ends here. Inside this, we have created form, method is post and the URL is add category. So when you click on the add button, our server will call the add route and this function. Inside this form, we have a field or a column called name and spending limit. Below this form, we have a table which is displaying the name, limit, and action. Which is basically displaying the categories which are already created. We are also giving option to edit each category, like editing the name, spending limit, deleting a category, or saving the changes. Save the frontend file, go back to app.py. Now that we have the name of the columns, like the name and spending limit, we can accept those values when the form is submitted. So let's get the name from request.form name. This is being highlighted with yellow underlined, so not defined. Alright, let me import it, request. Now this should go away here. Spending limit. Let's accept the spending limit. Request.form spending limit. Connection. Let's create a database connection. And then we are going to execute an SQL statement, which is to insert into categories table. Values will be name, spending limit. The columns will be name and spending limit, and values. Here I'll just give two placeholders. Outside the column, here I'll give the name and spending limit. Connection.commit, and then connection.close. Now let's return the URL, redirect the users to URL_for to view categories. Set. Let me execute the application now. Okay, we have some error in our application. This should be methods. Save it. Click on the URL. Now click on categories. Just small error here inside app.py. Okay, so the issue is in line number 66, view category method. Okay, so line number 66, view category inside getter. Now let's execute this. Alright, so here is the output after our logic changes. So we added the logic to view the categories and add a category. There was a minor issue with the logic. I was getting some errors. So the issue was the name of the route and the name of the function should be same, which is why I was getting that error. This should be like this. Save it, refresh. Since we do not have any URL for the route for edit category, which is why we are getting this error. Let me quickly create this route. Just copy this and then paste it. This should be edit and edit category. Redirect URL for view categories. Once they are done with the edit, I'm just going to redirect to view categories. Save it. Let's just execute this. Click on the URL. So I have a category called coffee. I have spent 0 and the limit is 500. Let me create one more category. Okay, we don't have delete category as well. So let me again create the route for the delete category. This is just going to be delete category, delete. Save it, refresh it. Let me create one more category for food and $1,000 per month. Add it. So here is our food category. Let's go to the dashboard. We have two categories, coffee and food. Now it's time to write the logic for edit category. When I tried to edit this value to, let's say, TA and saved it, the function was called, but since I don't have the logic yet, which is why the changes were not saved. This is going to be same as add category. The difference is we are going to execute update statement instead of insert when we are editing a category. So I'll just copy this entire code and paste it here. Just remove this. We will get the name, spending limit, create a database connection. Instead of insert statement, we will just execute an update statement. Alright, so let's do that. So update table name is categories. We are going to set name equals to a placeholder and spending limit. 1 second, I should give an underscore here. Yeah, so I've given one more placeholder where ID equals to a placeholder. We are going to update the name and spending limit and the ID. I'll tell you what is ID here. Each category is associated with a primary key field which is called ID. When we are editing a category and saving it, that change will be updated against an ID. So when I save it, we want this ID, right? Now here we are not accepting any ID in the route URL, so we need to accept it before setting the ID here. Just give a forward slash and mention int and ID. Now this should be fine. So this got updated. Now if I go to dashboard, we have coffee/tea and food. We built the logic to update a category. Now we have to write the logic to delete a category, right? If I click on delete, it will give me some error, says method not allowed, which is fine for now, but we are going to change it. So in the delete category, we have to mention exactly this thing because we are deleting an ID, right? I mean, we are deleting a category associated with a primary key called ID. We have to pass the ID here. All right. First thing, create a connection, get database connection. Second thing, execute an SQL statement. So since this is to delete a category, we are going to delete from categories where ID equals to a placeholder. This should be in a simple bracket separated by comma. Connection.commit and then connection.close it. We have to make sure that once a category is deleted, all the expenses associated with that categories are also deleted. So we have to write one more delete statement, which is to delete from expenses where category ID equals to ID. Save this and let me refresh this page. So now let me delete one of the category, click on delete. I'm getting a method not allowed error, which is because in the app.py, in the delete category function, I have mentioned this thing method equal to post, remove it. Why we have to remove it? Because in the categories.html file, on this line we are using an href element. An anchor tag always sends its data to a get request. So we have to remove the post method from here. Save it. Now if I execute this, the category called food is gone. Let me increase this limit to, let's say, 10,000. Save it. This is also working. 10,000. Right, so we are done with the categories logic. I mean, we have created logic to view a category, delete, add, and edit. I hope you guys have understood the coding till now. If you are facing any issues, comment below. I will try to help you out. Now let's move on to expenses logic. We already have the view expenses logic in place, so we don't have to do anything here. We are going to write the logic to add an expense, view an expense, and edit an expense. Before doing this, let's do the front-end changes. So expense.html. Right, so here is our expense.html template. We are expanding it from base.html. The block of expenses starts from here and here. The first form is to add an expense. We are going to select a category from a drop-down list, add a description, and enter the amount. Once it is saved, the expenses will be displayed in this table here. Now each expenses can also be edited and deleted. So I have created the logic to edit an expense and delete an expense right here. Our expenses.html is ready. Let's write our backend logic for expenses.html. First is to add an expense. So app.route expense, method equal to post. Let's define the method add expense. Alright, so here is the logic to add an expense. I'm getting the category ID, description, and amount from our request form, creating a database connection, and executing the SQL statement to insert this value into expenses table, committing the changes, closing the connection, and returning to our view expenses route, which is this. Next is to edit an expense. Now this is also same as the categories edit. We will call this URL with an ID, ID of the expenses, and those will be sent to backend through post method. Methods equals to post expense ID. Alright. So this is going to be same as the add expenses. We will accept ID, category, and amount, create a database connection. Actually, I'll copy till here like this. Now instead of insert statement, I'll just execute an update statement. So here is our update statement to update the expense table. I hope this is clear to you guys. Let me know in the comment if you are facing any issues. Next is to delete an expense. app.py at app route. We are calling the delete underscore expense route ID. That's it. Alright, to delete an expense, we have to create a connection, get database connection, conn.execute our SQL statement to delete from expense table where ID equals to should be ID and then one more comma. Init function and then closing it. We will return to view expenses page, redirect URL or view expenses. Save this. Now let's see the output. Open view terminal. This is fine. So this is our dashboard. I'm going to create an expense, selecting the category as this. Description is, I'll just describe it as taking a coffee break. Amount, let's say 20. Add it. So here is our expenses added. I'm going to add one more expense, coffee break. Let's have TA or evening tea of 10 rupees or $10. Add it. So we have two expenses here. Now if I go to our dashboard, it should give me the total spent and the limits available. Let me add one more expense. This time I'll say tea party. Now on this party, I have spent somewhere around 1,200 rupees or dollar. Save it. Let me add a couple of more expenses. Let's say expensive coffee of 20,000. Add it. Go to our. So now we have this indicator which says I am over the limit. So this is a good indicator which will help us visualize how much is left for spending and how much we have already spent. So this is a good feature. Let me add one more category. Now this time I'm going to add, let's say, food. Spending limit of 500. I'll add an expense. This time I'll select food. Let's say dinner with friends. I've spent somewhere around 120. Add. So food is added. I'll select one more food. Lunch of 100. Alright, added. Now go back to your dashboard. Now we have two categories, coffee and food. For both the categories, we can see the spent and the limit and the indicator which says whether I am over the limit or under the limit. Alright, now let's do a quick code review. So this is our backend logic. Here we have imported all the libraries we needed. We initialized our application. We configured our database, created two tables, all categories and expenses. Now this is our root route. Whenever a user visits our web page or web application, we are going to send them to this route and display them the dashboard or HTML file. We have a route for categories. To view the category, add a category, edit and delete a category. We have also built logic to view expenses, adding an expense, edit and delete an expense. And for the front end, we are using Jinja 2 templating to extend the base.html file to other HTML files like expenses.html, categories and dashboard. In this way, changes made to our base.html will be reflected in all the other HTML files. So this is quite handy. And that's it. We have just built our very own personal budget calculator web application with Flask and SQLite 3. Now you can add categories, set spending limit, track your expenses, and take full control of your budget. If you found this project helpful, hit that like button, share it with a friend who needs better money management, and don't forget to subscribe for more fun Python and Flask project. Comment below what new features you would like to see, maybe a chart, user login, or even an AI suggestion for money saving. I might just cover it in the next video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.